Okay, Mishlei 15:3. This is like I said in the description. This is not very Mishleic sounding. Sounds like more Koheles or Iyov or Tehilim. B'chol makom ene Hashem sophos ra'im v'tovim. Don't we say that in? Don't we borrow that? Do we say that in B'chol ma'aminim or in somewhere in the Piyutim in the Yom Ryan?
Yeah, 20 row.
Maybe we just say Ryan Vatovim, not Sophos though. Okay, anyway, yeah. Translation?
God's eyes are everywhere.
Yeah.
They see bad and good.
The eyes of Hashem are everywhere. Everywhere. Seeing bad, I guess bad people and good people, I think, right?
Or bad deeds and good deeds.
Okay, so bad.
Or does that be tovos?
Yeah, ma'asim. Well, we do say ma'asim tovim, right? Yeah. So bad and good. Yeah, well, we'll leave it like that. Okay. So Sophos is Mrs. Sion says is inyan habata uriya, is looking or seeing. Okay, right. So let's just add in a bunch of different synonyms here. So seeing, looking at, gazing upon. Okay. And then the Targum says b'chol asar anoid Hashem chamyin bevishe uvatave. If those of you who say the Bittul Chametz in Aramaic are familiar with the Shoresh here of Kol Chamir Chamia de Chamite Udelo Chamite, right? I don't know exactly what the etymology of that is. Okay, fine. So straightforward translation. Our scroll says the eyes of Hashem are everywhere, seeing the evil and the good. Okay, so they make it even less ambiguous than ours. Rofer says the eyes of God are in every place. I think in every place is better. Are in every place. B'chol makom. Observing, okay, we'll add this here. Observing both the evil and the good. Alder says the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, watching. Okay, there's another. Okay, watching I'll just say the bad and the good. Actually, that looks weird if I say gazing upon or whatever. Gazing upon the bad and the good. All right, that's what we got here. Okay. Yeah. So very straightforward reading. Probably not that many questions. So what are the questions? Yeah. Yeah, David.
How are you defining Hashem in this context?
Can you be more precise in your question?
Sure. Okay. When we talk about Hashem and Mishlei, I know sometimes we talk about Hashem as being like the laws of cause and effect or like natural consequences.
Okay, so I'm just going to clarify this because that sounds a little heretical. Okay, right? Is Hashem always means Hashem, right? But when we talk about Hashem and Mishlei, the question is, what exactly is it positing, or why are we framing an idea in terms of Hashem, right? So there you get this idea that the Rambam says in the Mornevuchim 2 something, and then the Meiri says in Mishlei, I think 10:3, which is that Hashem is the cause of all causes. So sometimes then the Navi or the author will refer to a particular natural cause as being directly from Hashem, when really it's not directly from Hashem, right? So like the example, in Barki Nafshi, we say, we talk about Hashem doing all sorts of stuff in nature, like melting the snow and all that stuff, does not mean that there's a hashgacha pratis on snow that melts it. It means that Hashem set up the world with the changing of the seasons and the melting point of water and all that stuff, right? So the question here is, how do we want to say this question? That's the most fruitful way to say it without straying into heresy. I'm not accusing you of being heretic, but yeah.
How do we learn this pasuk in the literal sense, using God, and in the metaphorical sense?
Well, it's going to be metaphorical no matter what, right? Because God doesn't have eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
And if he did, they couldn't be in any place, right? Yeah, Isaac.
In terms of the eyes of Hashem is metaphorical, so when we talk about Hashem doing it, that is not metaphorical as far as we can talk about Hashem doing anything.
Right.
Because it is Hashem doing it, but through more steps.
Yeah, right. It's as metaphorical or not metaphorical as we mean when we talk about Hashem acting in general, right? Yeah. Isaiah?
The Ra'im and Tovim. So is it like people who are Ra'im and Tovim, or could it also be like actions that are Ra'im and Tovim?
I'll list that in a second.
Events,
Question. Yeah. Ezra?
what actions are you referring to? Like,
Right. This one is interesting. It does not say actions, right? At least it doesn't express it as actions.
Implied, like, therefore, like,
Right.
good things or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Ezra?
Maybe what effect are we referring to which God caused?
Yeah. See, let me just a little bit of methodology here. Like, this is the art in Mishlei of asking questions. Is sometimes asking the more general question is good because it keeps you open to like different ways of thinking. And sometimes the narrow, the more precise formulation is good, but you don't want to lock yourself into that. So like your question is not a bad question because it's saying what effect is it talking about, but what if it's not talking about an effect? Right. So I'm just trying to think how best to ask this question. Yeah, Isaac.
What phenomenon is in Hashem expressing?
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. Let's do that. Yeah. So what phenomenon is eyes of Hashem expressing in this context? Okay, I think that's, you want to add on to that?
Kind of a good question.
Yeah.
Which is, I think Ryan and Tovim are plural, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like any Hashem we're easy upon bad and good as like
right.
It's like
the bads and goods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So then you got Isaiah's question, which is what is being referred to here as Ra'im V'Tovim. Okay. I guess people, things, question mark. Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah, Moshe.
Is God just observing it, or is he acting in any way?
Okay, right. So now, yeah, so this is the place for Ezra's question, right? Which is that does this phenomenon imply a specific action or interaction on Hashem's part, right? Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, Ezra.
Isn't this obvious?
Okay, yeah. Isn't this obvious? Okay, and not obvious from like common sense, but from Torah, right? From basic fundamentals of Torah, right? Of course, God is aware of everything. Yeah. Yeah.
What are there two opposite sides of stuff?
Okay, right. So what are the opposites here? Yeah.
What's the purpose of the pasuk?
What is the practical idea? Here we really need to ask what is the practical application, because it's not telling us to do anything, right? What is the implied, therefore? Yeah. Yeah, David?
Maybe to say as a couple question of the why particularly talk about running the Comin.
Yeah.
God can say anything, but then why particular is Shlomo?
Okay, right. So so why focus? Actually, I'm going to put this pairing it with this question here. Why, granted, okay, yeah, I'll do it the other way. Okay. Given that God knows everything, why focus specifically on Ra'im V'Tovim? Yeah.
Oh, it's a decision making center.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to include that. No, I'll make that a question. Okay. So what, if anything, is the specific decision-making scenario here that this pasuk is addressing? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, who's talking about?
Yeah. Let's say who is it talking about? Who do you mean? Who's the audience, or do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Who is the intended audience?
audience?
Well, who's it talking about? Sounds like more the Ra'im and the Tovim. Like, who are the Ra'im and the Tovim? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What do we mean by makom?
Yeah. What do we mean by makom? What do we mean by makom in in this context? And I'm going to actually add to Ezra Koppel's question is what is the Havamina, right? I think that's part of this question. Yeah, I also want to, yeah.
Compared to Claus?
No, not now. Yeah, actually, well, I will ask that question, which is like in what sense is this a Mishleic idea? And by that I mean, like, for example, if we found this idea in other Sifrei Nach, how if at all would we understand it differently? Yeah. I also want to ask, I don't know if this is a good question, but is this connected to the preceding or following psukim? Okay, which is something that we don't usually ask that out at the outset, but I just want to go back to what the local cluster, as we say, and see what psukim came before and after. So Ma'ane Rach Yashif Chema Udvar Esav Yale'af, right? So the gentle reply turns away wrath, and a provocative statement brings up anger. So that's about speech and how it affects your interactions with people. Lashon Chachamim Tetiv Das Psiklim Yabia Ivelis. The tongue of Chachamim improves knowledge, but the mouth of fools expresses foolishness. That's also about speech. Seems like a non sequitur. Marpe Lashon Eitz Chaim V'Selef Ba Shever Beruach. Healing tongue is a tree of life, and a corruption of it breaks the spirit. Okay, so you got another pasuk about speech, right? So I think that, to me, points to the fact that let's say which are all about speech, right? To me, that sounds like something we should take into account. Yeah,
what idea is expressed by Sophos?
Okay, yeah, that was the last question I think that we did not touch on, which is what is implied by safa as opposed to other verbs for seeing? Yeah.
Also not about the seeing, I think, like it could be any kind of sensing.
Okay, right.
Or
sensing. Yeah, right. He hears everything. Exactly. Yeah. That's good.
But that would make more sense with speech. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
I guess we may have asked this implicitly, but just knowing this fact, okay, that Hashem is watching bad and good. Okay, so what does it have to do with it? What is it? Maybe it's so special, but what else has to do with that?
Yeah, practical application. Yeah. I also want to ask this. I feel like whenever we maybe this is just because of my non-Jewish background, but I'm going to ask this question: what is the difference between this and Santa Claus? Right, because I think there is a childish way of what's the lyric of the song? He knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake, and so I think this lends itself to a childish idea, and I want to explicitly draw out what that feeling is and assess, is the Torah trying to harness that and mature it, or is that a completely distorted, unrelated phenomenon?
What was the song?
Well, it's we have the internet at our disposal. What's the song called though?
Santa Claus is coming.
Santa Claus is coming, right? Santa Claus is coming. The town.
You can see
lyrics. Oh, it's right there. Oh, that was in Spanish. Okay. Right. So you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why Santa Claus is coming to town. He's making a list and checking it twice. Going to find out who's naughty and nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees when he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. Right. So that's, I always, again, I grew up with this song. So I can't help but think of, especially with the rhyme and the song. Oh, that's another question, which is, and I don't know if this is a good question, but where's the rhyme? Yeah. Is there a significance to the order of Ra'im V'Tovim, or did it just have to be in some order, right? I don't know if one makes more sense to me. Tzofos Tovim V'Ra'im. Yeah, I don't know if one makes more sense to me, but I can't help but wonder this. Yeah. Okay, so that was more questions than I expected. Yeah, Isaac. Sure, approach.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that meaning Hashem is Mishlei cause and effect.
Okay.
And I think there's this temptation to feel sometimes Mishlei is true in general, but in this circumstance, it's not going to apply.
Yeah.
And saying, the meaning Hashem are, see everything, but whether it's a good or bad decision.
Yeah. Okay. So the emotional Havamina, right, is that of course, cause and effect applies everywhere, but this is an exception, right? So this is saying no, the eyes of Hashem are everywhere. And can we just draw out specifically how this is a good mashal for how eyes of Hashem means cause and effect in Mishleic sense? Like, wasn't like what is the mashal? We could get that clear. Yeah, David.
When I think to what you're talking about before, that like the one who created the laws of nature and created cause and effect is like seeing two cause and effect happening. And so I mean like you can't the creator who created the laws of nature is not going to escape his eyes this one circumstance that you're in. He's going to be seeing constantly this is what's always happening.
Okay. All right, that's getting closer. I'm still
like hidden from
it's okay. Yeah. See, I think here's the thing that is slightly getting me here, which is that the immediate implication of eyes is perception, right? And you're saying here that eyes of Hashem is not the real meaning is not that he perceives it, but that he regulates it or causes it to operate. So I'm just trying to bridge that gap. Like I do agree with your interpretation. Yeah. Ezra Vader, do you have an idea?
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Do you mean all cause and effect, or specifically like a Mishlei type cause and effect?
This is a question for Isaac. Yeah.
I'd say because it's the Mishlei, that's Mishlei. I'm leaning more for Mishlei cause and effect. And I think that's. I don't think a person's so inclined to be like, oh, if I drop this cup, it's not gonna fall. Like it's not like the type of thing. But since Mishlei, there's a little bit more, like I'd say, like obscurity about the future, then people might have this feeling.
The question points out another question which we forgot, which is so what is being referred to by Rami Tovim? And I'll say if this refers to people, why such vague descriptions? As opposed to I don't know tzaddikim, rushayim, or something like that. Okay. So are we? Still, I'm trying to follow Isaac. So yeah. Go ahead.
So maybe like for the cause and effect type thing. Maybe like this scenario in this case would be like like look maybe like look let's take a case where like someone is discussing about a certain thing, whether it's good or bad, or like a person if he's good or bad and how he conducts certain behavior or whatever. At the end of the day, like without concrete evidence, we just don't know. Like there's no way of us knowing, whether this guy's good or bad. The only person who does know is God. And in the future, it's funny. I was listening to Rabbi's shiur on the Nasa Neshma, and he was saying like, the one question you should ask about this guy is how he conducts himself in business if he's in business. Because depending how he conducts himself in business, like it'll give you an idea of who he is as an individual, how he conducts his life. So like over here, like only time can tell, whether he's acting justly or unjustly, because it's going to present himself. Present itself in the future.
Okay, so I'm what I'm grappling with here is I think this is a good approach, but I'm questioning whether it's the same approach or not. Because what that reminds me of is in here's a Sefer Shmuel thing for you. How far are you in Shmuel?
Sorry, the second paper.
Okay, yeah. So do you know which parak he talked where he sends Shmuel to go find David?
Yeah,
for the first time.
Yudalit,
okay.
Yeah, or Tesvav, Yudalit, Tesvav.
Hold on a second. There we go. Shmuel al tabe el mar'ehu. This is talking about Shmuel thinks that Eliav is the one that Hashem picked as the Melech. Yeah. So he sees him and apparently he has like an impressive stature, and he says, and Hashem says, no, that's not the one. Don't look at his height and the height of his stature, his appearance and the height of his stature. For I have rejected him. It is not as man sees. Man only sees what the visual, but God sees the heart. So like again, it could be related, but I feel like there is another approach to take where it's saying that our vision is limited, but Hashem's vision is unlimited. And can take into account the entire person, the inside and the outside. So I'm just gonna.
He did get angry at David in the future. Like, that it presents.
I'm just gonna note this, not to fully spell it out, but just as an alternative approach, which is that Hashem's view is unrestricted, whereas ours is limited. Okay, so let's going back to Isaac's. Yeah, Moshe.
What do you mean by Mishlei cause and effect?
Yeah, you want to elaborate on what you mean by Mishlei cause and effect?
I'd say,
Or like to the exclusion of what? Like, why are you limiting it to Mishlei cause and effect as opposed to cause and effect?
yeah, so I'd say it's like long-term consequences for your decisions that aren't necessarily the same as the short-term consequences. So like let's say if you feel this money right now, like in the short term you're going to get away with it, but in the long term people are going to find out and it's going to ruin the reputation, let's say.
So it's funny you say that. I'm glad I asked the question. I'm glad you asked the question because I thought you meant something totally different. I thought you meant by Mishlei cause and effect consequences in this world as opposed to, let's say, in Olam Haba, or as opposed to halachic, onshim or hashgacha pratis.
I wasn't being so.
Yeah.
I also mean that.
Okay. Yeah. Meaning the type. I think what I think Isaac means is the type of cause and effect that Mishlei frequently talks about and like uses to motivate your behavior and whatever you understand that to be. So, for example, like Ralbag does take into account Olam Haba and Hashgacha Pratis, whereas like our approach tends to focus more on Olam Hazeh and Hashgacha Claus. Yeah, Ezra?
If that's what you mean by cause and effect, I would question that it's always necessarily going to happen. Like, for example, in the stealing case, it's true, as a general rule, you're going to have bad reputation, people are going to find out. But it's very possible, and there are certain cases and exceptions where that doesn't happen, and you end up getting away with stealing, and that's it, right?
It was the norm.
So I think actually that helps me refine Aini Hashem.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not saying you'll always, Hashem's always going to act, but it's not. But even in the cases where you get away with it or something, you're not, the eyes of Hashem are still seeing, like you're still under the general principles,
right?
You even if in this particular circumstance, it's it's not happening, and you don't think that you're gonna not that you're not gonna, definitely not gonna not escape the consequences.
Yeah,
possibly you will, but the rules still apply.
Yeah. I think that's a good refinement. I'm still not satisfied yet. Yeah, Ezra.
I'll just follow up. If that's the case, then what's the import of the book? What's it teaching you? If you can still get away with it, and it's very nice to apply, but it doesn't really matter. So
I think you answered that earlier, which is that there is a havamina that if I did this bad action and got away with it, it means that it is not under God's supervision, meaning that I got away with it because God didn't see it, meaning because it's not following these principles. And Kamash Milan, it is following the principles, and this is how these principles work. Is it's not going to be a guarantee. Yeah, is that? Yeah, Ezra.
I have another question on the approach.
Yeah, I also have another question on the approach. Yeah.
This does address Ra'im, but how does it address
exactly? That's my question also, which is that the idea seems to be equally applicable to Ra'im and Tovim. And or it's trying to draw your attention to the fact that whatever you think happens by Tovim happens by Ra'im, or whatever happens by Ra'im happens by Tovim. So I think that there's room for that in your approach, but I think that's for the idea that needs to be elaborated on. Yeah, Lauren?
That was a different approach.
Okay, so let me go to Isaiah first. We'll get out some other approaches here. I'm feeling like I don't have a term for this, but just like last week's pasuk, there were 3 distinct ways to read it. And then within each way, there were ideas that overlapped with each other. And then there was a certain overlap in the entire thing. Some psukim lend themselves to a completely different approach. Some of them seem to be the ideas are going to be revolving around the same points. So let's get everything out on the table now. Yeah, Isaiah. And also we might also have to change our style because we have so many more people this year than last year. We might need to focus on day 1, getting everything out on the table, and then sorting through it at the beginning of day 2.
Last year we had the luxury of taking a pasuk a day.
That's true. Yeah, Isaiah, towards the end.
Yeah. So my approach is to say that you might think if you make a decision, but then it doesn't have such an effect, maybe it fizzles out. You decide on something, but then, something happens and nothing happens from the practical decision that you made. So then you might think it's not a bad or good decision. I think people kind of feel like that, but it's not really true because there's other, whether or not it was a good decision, affects you as a person. And changes your attachment to decision making, regardless of if the good or badness of the decision came to fruition.
Right. Okay, good. So you might think that if you make a decision and it doesn't have an apparent effect, meaning I'm going to say a visible effect, then that is somehow indicative of the goodness or badness of the decision. Okay. Kamash Malan, from Hashem's long-seeing perspective, then all actions have ramifications, even if we don't see them, and we therefore need to evaluate the decision based on the choice itself rather than what we see of its effects. Is that your idea, or am I projecting?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good. Yeah. You want to add? Yeah.
Maybe the reason, maybe this is what you're trying to express, but maybe I think that the reason why it's focusing on that any Hashem is because persons walk into only seeing what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then like you're trying to make a decision whether it's raw or tov, whether it's raw or tov decision based on what what's happened up to this point. But the Ein Hashem can see whether it's really right or tov.
Okay, so let me just add to this. I'm kind of going to add what you just said in my own interpretation, and b'chol makom. So I think it's referring. So because it's referring to man's vision, then it uses Hashem's vision. B, I think in my mind, I haven't done a concordantia thing. Sofa, I think, does usually refer to seeing far. Okay, like you call a navi a sofa because he sees the future, or I need to look and see if this is actually true. It implies Say again? Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, right. So far vision, and C, the b'chol makom, I guess underscores the fact that these consequences can be far-reaching beyond what you have access to, right? In your perception. Yeah, Ezra?
I think Isaiah also mentioned that there's an effect on the person, and I think that also goes well with the pasuk of Ein Hashem seeing into the person's heart, from Ishmael that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
That
right.
There's no visual effect for a bystander or even for the person himself.
Yeah.
But God does see the decision that you made, like sees your thoughts.
Okay, right. Also God's vision extends into the person's mind and decision making. Yeah, I still don't know whether that is diluting the idea or whether that should be like part of Ariel's idea. I'm not really sure. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there are psukim that say, for example, libos Hashem, right? That there a crucible is for silver and a melting pot is for gold, but God tests hearts. Or there are psukim that talk about God sees into your heart. This one seems to be external sight. It's not really emphasizing what's going on inside, even though you could say that that's what the Rambam and Tomi was talking about. But I sense that the emphasis is on the far-reaching nature of God's sight, not the penetrating nature of God's sight. Yara?
I might have a little twist on it as a person. Like, okay. I'm thinking maybe Hashem's eyes are in every place. Maybe it means that of course we're limited in our sight, relative to God 100%. But I'm also wondering, in terms of analyzing a choice, just thinking through the choices, maybe you can see, if you really analyze it, going through the logical assessment of each choice, then you maybe could possibly see if this outcome will lead to ra or good. And in that sense, going through that process, that is kind of using Hashem's eyes through Chachma in that decision making process. Okay,
so you're saying that the Rambam and Tovim might not be good and bad people?
No, not necessarily. The decision, and it could. It's both. I think it'd be both because, Tony, I had a case last night where I was analyzing a specific situation and I came to the conclusion through the knowledge that I had that, it's a meforshim. Either this guy's scamming this one guy or he just doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's good. In either case, it's you know, logically, I feel very comfortable
Yeah.
making the decision I made because, like, you know,
Yeah.
going through the process.
That is definitely possible. Yeah, Oren, new approach.
I want to read this as being about speech.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Yeah.
Mostly because otherwise I don't really know what it's talking about, and all these other ones seem a little speculative to me.
Okay.
So I want to say that I think there's a Havamina with speech. I'm thinking especially about like Lashon Hara, but I guess it probably could apply outside. But like, you might think like, oh, the thing I'm saying is not so great, but like the people that I'm saying it to right now, like we're not going to think bad things about the person. Like this isn't actually going to harm, this person's reputation. Like, this isn't going to have any real lasting effects.
Yeah.
Because like we know the guy or whatever, something like that. And so I think what this is saying is that's not true. Why? Because and so what's happening is Mishlei isn't directly going against that idea, but it's like even if that were the case, you're still bad for saying it. So the Ra'im and Tovim are the people, bad people or good people.
Yeah. And
so when you say that thing, even if it were the case that the person's reputation won't be harmed or anything like that, having said that still affects your moral character.
Yeah.
You become a raw, well, not raw, raw.
Yeah. So I like the idea, but I'm very bothered by the incongruity of the senses. I think it would be so much better if Hashem hears.
So the reason why, so I thought about that. So I think the Eine is not Eine that he's listening to the speech, but it's because he's seeing your character.
Okay. So, all right. So that's possible. Yeah.
It's not actually about what you said or the sociological effect of what you said. It's about the moral effect that it has on your character of having done that action.
Yeah. Okay. So this is talking about speech like the other pasukim in the local cluster, and it's addressing a hava amina that you're and are you including good speech also, like in just saying the opposite about the good speech, or are you saying specifically for the bad speech?
I mean, it's probably true for good speech also.
Okay, because I think I want to point out that Isaiah's idea does address the question and the problem we had on Isaac's idea, which is that Isaac's idea did seem to be focusing more on the bad, at least the way you initially said it, whereas Isaiah's is talking equally about both. And so I think we should strive for an idea that is talking either about both or it's trying to draw an analogy from one to the other. So I'll type it out for a second and then we'll see. So it's addressing Havmina that your speech doesn't really have bad effects based on whatever like rationalization you come up with. Okay, in truth, Hashem sees your character, and that is what I guess determines your the quality of your speech. I know I'm being loose here. Quality of your speech, yeah, Ezra.
I mean, can you also say that God sees the outcome of your words, bad or good?
Yeah.
Compliments too, that way.
Yeah, I think that also fits better. I'll say alternatively, God sees the outcome of your speech. See, that would be, to me, the most harmonious way to say that this pasuk is talking about speech like the rest of them, but it is appropriate to say seeing because it's talking about the outcomes, So it's essentially, this would be, this is kind of an interesting combination of Isaac's idea and Isaiah's idea into the context, which is the strength of your approach. Yeah, Isaac.
That was good. It's two things. So I think you can say the same thing for like good speech.
Yeah.
Where it might kind of feel like, oh, what's the point? Even if we were having a good, positive conversation about this person.
Yeah.
Or what a conversation in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't even come with it.
Yeah. Right.
That's a strike through for bad effects.
Yeah, right. Where did I write the word effects? Second line, yeah. Why can't I click in the middle of the thing now suddenly? I don't know. For some reason I can't, but anyway, I can't highlight it.
You shift left.
Shift left.
Click.
Shift left. Never knew that trick. Nice. Okay.
Shift control does the whole work.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, Ezra.
I have another approach.
Okay.
It's a little bit similar to ours, but I think a little bit broader.
Yeah.
I think it could be referring. I think often a problem that could come about is in a case where somebody is learning Mishlei, they could get. It seems like I think a problem could be they get stuck into the Mishlei way of thinking and forget about actual like moral good and bad.
Okay, it's happened. Yeah.
So you end up thinking like all that really matters is like this long-term thinking in terms of consequences, in terms of like what ends up helping me, as opposed to thinking about like also what's like morally good and bad for you.
Yeah.
So it could be saying b'chol makom in any case, even if you're like in line with the Mishlei approach, or maybe in a case where like you get away with stealing even within the Mishlei approach, still God notices and sees what's good and bad. And that's like just like sort of reminding you about that value as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I like that approach also. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, separate approach.
Yeah.
I would have expected when the pasuk says "B'chol makom einei Hashem,"
Yeah.
that the conclusion would be he sees everything.
Right.
So the question is, why is he focusing on good and bad?
Right.
So I think the idea could then be is that, so to say, there's a different type of looking that God does relative to good and bad, that has a different quality to it in terms of how it relates to God. And so like a person might think like, oh, God's just like knows everything, kind of like a deistic God separate from the world.
Yeah.
He knows everything about the world, but doesn't really intervene.
Right.
But then the idea that, no, he's specifically looking out for good and bad means that there's a specific providence that exists
Okay.
relative to good and bad. That's important to know. And then perhaps somehow you can then relate that idea to speech of why we're highlighting that idea now.
Right. Okay. This is good. So in other words, the concept we have of God's knowledge isn't just a deistic, he knows the universe as a whole, or he knows physics, but it also extends to morality and to to particular human actions and character. Yeah, that's like the point that the Rambam concludes with in the end of the morning book, and one of my favorite pasukim in Yirmiyahu of Haskell V'Yado Osi, comprehending and Kim Bezostis Halam Yishalo. Only in this can a person take praise himself. Haskell V'Yado Osi, comprehending and knowing me. K'ani Hashem, I am Hashem, because I'm Hashem. Ose Chesed Mishpat Utzedakah Ba'aretz, who does kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. Because in these is my desire. So he says Hashem's desire does not just extend to the heavens like a deistic Aristotelian view, but it extends to Chesed Mishpat Utzedakah Ba'aretz, and that's a new point. Yeah, it is interesting because it is kind of similar to Ezra's, or it's a similar category of mistake, which is that this can address the mentality of someone who is to whom cause and effect is real to their mind. This is a bad sentence. In the world at large, but not when it comes to decision making and morality. Right? Yeah. Isaac. Yeah.
So why is this a Mishlei?
I mean, isn't this like? Oh, you mean why is the Havmina going to be the Mishlei? Because the Maskana is definitely relevant to Mishlei, right?
I guess saying this about decision making and morality.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna play the copy.
What was it?
I was waiting for a while now.
Okay.
So I have an answer for Ram and Tobin.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we say that like Ram comes first because people notice the bad more quicker than the good.
Okay.
It's more present in people's lives.
All right, maybe Ra'im comes first because it's more noticeable. Yeah. Again, I don't know whether this question is even good, but God knows. Yeah.
Yeah. So my as a explanation of my idea in the context.
Yeah.
I think
in the context of the other psukim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think borrowing from some of what Oren said.
Yeah.
I think Oren's idea is a great example of one of the types of like I said, one case of mistake.
Yeah.
And it's bringing in speech because I think speech is where people are most likely to make the mistake of
okay, that's a good answer also. Okay, so I'm just gonna append this. Where is the there we go. Why? No, I can't even. Oh, it's there. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to add this here. Is that that the relevance of this to the local cluster is that speech is the area in which people are most prone to making this mistake. Yeah, okay. All right, so in the interest of time, let's look at Metzudas David, who I haven't seen it yet, but I'm feeling he's not going to help us. Okay, meaning he's not going to give us more than what we already have, but we'll see. And then if maybe we'll go to Rבינו Yona. Oh, this is still in Shmuel. So Ksuvim, Mishlei, 15, Gimel. He says, af im yasiso b'mistarim. That makes more sense. Okay, so I'm going to assume that yours is correct. So let me just look on here. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Because yasiso would be to like a maces, right? If they like entice you. Af im. Although I easily imagine me bringing this to Rabbi Novetsky's attention, and he says, "Yeah, well, how do you explain this manuscript?" And it has it, so we'll see. Av im yistaru b'mistarim. Even if a person were to seclude themselves in hidden areas, which I think is a reference. No, I think it's a reference to Yeshayahu 58. Let's just see if I'm just making this up. No, I'm thinking of something else. Okay, fine. Yeah, even if you hide yourself in hidden areas, nevertheless, the eyes of Hashem gaze upon every deed that is good or bad, and nothing is hidden from him, right? So, so this is closest to who falls into this. So I this definitely could apply to Isaac's. I mean, it really is closest to Ariel's, right? Is that you can't hide from Hashem, right? And so the Havmin is I can hide, right? So you're trying to conceal things. That's like Chazal say in Chagiga that that anyone who does an avera b'seiser, it's kilu dochak raglei Shechina. It's as if they're tripping the Shechina, right? Because Shechina is the Hashgachas Hashem. And I don't know, I forgot, I used to have explanation for tripping, but it's like you're trying to say that the Shechina doesn't patrol here, you know, so to speak. Yeah. All right, so that's Metzudas David. Okay, so I think that does lend itself to some of the approaches we were taking. Let's look at Rבינו Yona also now today, just to get it in our minds. Rבינו Yona is Chol Makom Eini Hashem Tovos U'Ra'im V'Tovim. Haboris Barak Mishalim Gmul Al Divrei Ha'ivelas Asher Yabia Ksilim Piksilim Bilti Ma'aseh. Okay, there you go. So it connects it to the previous pasuk. God rewards, gives retribution, doles out retribution for the words of foolishness that is expressed by the mouths of fools without action. I don't know this pasuk because it's in Yechezkel. Imracha es shnei hagoyim es shtei ha'aratzos li tiena. I'm just going to look this up here. Yechezkel 35:10. I want to read the surrounding context also. Yechezkel 35:10. If there is a surrounding context that is clear. Yeah, so Yechezkel says, because you said the two nations and the two lands shall be mine and we shall inherit them. But Hashem was there. So apparently they said this. I don't know what the context is. Apparently they said this thinking that Hashem is not there, but Hashem is there. Okay. Yeah, but Hashem Shamhaya. Hashem was there. V'nemar al Kain al Bachurav lo yismach Hashem ve'es yisomav ve'es almanosav lo yirachim ki kulo chanef umerea v'chol peh dover nevala. Okay, this is not in Yechezkel. This is in Yeshayahu 9:15. So Yeshayahu says 9:15, 16. Yeah. I just want to see if this. No, the guides of the people mislead and the guided ones are devoured. Therefore, my Lord shall not rejoice over their young men. He shall not pity their orphans and widows, for they are all hypocritical and evil, and every mouth utters degeneracy. Yet, despite all this, his anger has not subsided, and his hand is still outstretched. It's probably picking this because it's talking about every mouth utters degeneracy. You know, so I was wondering like why he's going here. Okay, so that is connecting it to the fools, and it's very similar to what Orrin is saying, that God hears what the fools are saying. My question on this approach would be, why is it talking about the Tovim, right? Rבינו Yona doesn't comment on that. And then what exactly does it mean? Oops, I'm on the wrong thing. What exactly does it mean that God will punish for the foolishness without action? Like, what's that clarifying here? You know? Yeah.
You would think that you have to do an action in order to receive some sort of
Right. Right.
You see that because God knows that either you're going to do an action or you have intention for bad actions.
So
that I don't know what the punishment would then be.
Right.
Or how.
So I was leaning towards the first direction, which is that in general, we're right. Is like, your thought, a thing that pops into your head is not going to necessarily, get rewarded or punished, right? But the Tehilim are so connected. Their speech is just expressing their desires and their like base way of relating to the world, that if they're expressing something verbally, like it's only a matter of time before they act on it or it's already shaped their values so much to the point, if they're blabbing about it so much, then they're involved in that imperfection anyway. All right, so let's think about this and come back to it tomorrow and see the other meforshim. Okay, have a good day.